The XRP and XLM connection is real, and XCN is next. This is NC Hammer Crypto. My name is Neil, keeping technical analysis short and sweet, as always, starting with Bitcoin. We had a little bit of a pullback showing that we are kind of bottoming out at this point. However, there is still the possibility to see that retracement down to 93,000 or even lower for a liquidity sweep. But as of right now, it is trying to build a little bit of support and testing this 200 EMA. So with that being said, the correlation between XLM and XRP, for Monty, he says there's a lot of stuff on my chart, which is true. It's just over the course of time, I start accumulating a bunch of information. So we see that I had something posted here and we saw a quick bull run. Then when we came down here back in April, I had these dates placed out where we might see a reversal, and we saw that reversal. Here we broke a downward trend line, and there was some important information here which had that continuation upward to the new all-time high. All these orange lines are kind of dates of information. So here between November 22nd to the end of November, there's some important information coming out, so keep that in mind. But what I want to show you in the correlation between XRP and XLM, let's look at November 10th right here. What happened on November 10th? We went from roughly 57 cents to around $2.88. Now, let's correlate that with XLM. What happened on November 10th? November 10th, right here. We went from around 11 cents all the way up to 64 cents. Which is weird with the correlation because XRP and XLM are going to be being used together. They're different partnerships. Some people say they're rivals, but we see in the correlation that when XRP pumps, so does XLM. And the correlation between that and XCN is a layer to XLM. So say, for example, there's dApps that are going to be made on Ethereum's blockchain, but they can't connect to other blockchains. That's where XCN comes in and can kind of manage within those areas. That since the internet came out, we had Web 1. We are on Web 3 now. There's a lot more crazy stuff, a lot more intricate details that a lot of people are not aware of. When I first started trading cryptocurrency, you'd have to buy crypto on one exchange, transfer it over to MetaMask, transfer that over to another platform. That platform can be transferred to get a specific coin that you transfer to another platform and earn passive income like 169% a day. A lot of process to get something done, but there's been substantial gains doing stuff like that. And that's kind of what XCN is going to be doing. For those of you who are unaware and think that XCN is dead, it is not. It is in correlation with XLM. So when XLM goes up, XCN has a tendency to go up as well. And what I would be looking at is we are working within this downward channel. Sorry, Monty, I can't get rid of everything that I have on here. It gives you a better idea of kind of where the support and resistance is. These red lines going across are just the support and resistance, more or less irrelevant. What we are currently looking at is within this channel. So what XLM is doing is it's trading within this channel, and we want it to bottom out on this bottom line here, which it kind of did and pulled up towards the 50, and then we want to see it come and test this downward trend line. If it can break this downward trend line, you typically see a push up and then a testing of it as support before ultimately taking back off to try and hit that previous high that we had. And once it breaks that previous high, there's more upside to see with cryptocurrencies such as XLM, XCN, and XRP. We are underneath the 200 EMA. The CM Guppy is a little strong here, but we pretty much just need to push up over this 31 cent mark and test this downward trend line, which would be around the third to fourth test. And this is a pretty weak downward trend line, and we could start seeing that upward momentum. We see it clearly came back to the original entry that we had at 28 cents whenever it was taking off about 70% more or less. and then it has retraced fully, even a little bit more, but it is trying to build higher lows. So again, with the trend lines, you could see something like this, trying to build higher lows. But ultimately, there's still the possibility if Bitcoin pulls back for us to test this once again. But ultimately, I believe we're going to be holding this as support and starting that upward momentum. Comparing that to XRP with its chart, putting back on all the other BS, it is trying to break out right here. But we see that it held as support and pushed up towards this 200 EMA, which we are currently getting a little rejection, which is fine because the more important information that I have listed here is between November 22nd to the end of November, potentially pushing into December. And what is happening here is ISO 222 is being implemented. So say you wanted to transfer money from the US to Europe. Well, they have to go through multiple banks. They have to do a bunch of transfers. They have to take some of your money in the process. But Swift banking system has to adapt to what XRP has already implemented into the system. So XRP is ahead of the game compared to the old system. You've seen Donald Trump talk about it, where the system is being implemented into ISO 222. That's what's happening in here. So we are working within this wedge. You can kind of ignore, wow, this black line. Within these two black lines is kind of the wedge we are working within. This upward black trend line is something that we didn't want to see broken. We saw it had that fake out, tested it, and then had a major rejection. So that's essentially what that trend line is doing. Once that trend line is broken, you should be exiting the trade because it has that major pullback. Here we have this trend line. It is trying to build some support. It's getting resistance on that 200 EMA, but we need to break over this downward trend line to start seeing the major potential upwards. Now, the whole reason people are watching the video is for XCN. XCN is still doing something where it is working within this downward wedge. These black trend lines, wow, completely irrelevant just to try and make sense of the chart. Getting rid of this circle too, getting rid of this black upward trend line. This green and black trend line is something that we didn't want to be broken, but we see that when that was broken, we had that further retracement, and we tried to make sense of it with this downward trend line. Keeping in mind we were completely oversold in the RSI, we need a little bit more volume right here to start seeing this pick back upwards. We are pretty far away from the 200 EMA, so this needs to be pulling up, bringing the RSI up to the 50, and at the same time pulling this up to the 0.008. If Bitcoin pulls back, there's still the possibility for it to do a liquidity sweep within this area down here around the 0.003 to 0.005 before ultimately pulling back up within these downward red trend lines. And we've seen this pattern many times. This is a downward wedge. And as I explained in the previous video, you typically see something like this, where you trade within this area. Maybe you see a liquidity sweep, pull back up. If it gets that rejection, it may be more bearish, but I believe we are going to pull back in here, get a consolidation, push up, test this downward red trend line, and when that is broken, there is a lot of range to be moving to the upside. So I'm not worried about it because XLM is in correlation with XCN. They work together, and XLM, when XRP pushes up, keeping in mind XRP within another 11 days or more, we are going to start seeing some major movement to the upside. That is more than likely. Maybe we see that liquidity sweep as well. I don't think with XRP because it is pretty stable and pretty healthy on this black upward trend line. However, it has been touched a few times, making it a little weaker, but XRP has been waiting to break out and push to the upside. And with XRP pushing upwards, you will see XLM push upwards, break out of this downward channel, and push back up to the 0.46 area. With that, you will see XCN push up towards this red downward trend line, and when that gets broken, we may test it as support and then be pushing up towards the 0.02 cents, which is where you would see a little bit of resistance, more than likely, because we've had resistance there in the past. And beyond that, 618 is all the way up here at 3 cents. So if you got a fraction of a penny and you want to turn it into 3 cents, XCN is your bet. It's very undervalued. Its all-time high is 18 cents. The utility behind it is phenomenal for what it can do for XLM and what XLM does for XRP. And so those of you who are waiting for your exit strategy on XCN, I am waiting to tell you a better exit strategy. But keep in mind, it'll be a few more days, if not weeks, for this to be pulling back up to break this downward trend line. And that's ultimately the resistance that we have to get over. 200 EMA needs to be broken as well. So when we push up, we may be testing that 200 EMA first before we get to test that red trend line. And so we may get a little consolidation within there around a penny before ultimately testing this once more and breaking that. But once that's broken, everybody's going to be freaking out. It's called FOMO for a reason, fear of missing out. And you're going to start seeing some exponential gains for XCN. Completely undervalued, 0.006 cents, all-time high of 18 cents. There's a long way to go for the upside for XCN. And for those of you kind of who are new to the game, definitely check out the other videos. There's a lot of good information in there. Right now the market's in consolidation, going a little sideways. But you know what's not going down? Tornado Cash. Constant upward momentum since I've talked about it back here in May of 2025. And as of the other video, I was stating if we can get some consolidation and hold above this black downward trend line, this is roughly the area we are working within, as we are getting some rejection on this downward trend line. But once we get over that, $26 is roughly the next step. I mean, we might get some resistance at 22, but almost $15.90, $16. Every entry we've had has been in profit. Even with the pullbacks, Bitcoin pulling back, we have not gone lower than the $11 mark. 200 EMA is a wall, and this thing really only has one way to go, which is up. Use the reference link, get yourself a free 20 USDT using that link, and yeah, it's free money. I'm trying to give you guys free money. None of this is financial advice, keeping that in mind. But good luck, have fun with it, like and subscribe. I'm going to do another video for all the other coins. Definitely check that one out. And we're just kind of sitting on our hands waiting for XCN to take off and move to the next level. Good luck, have fun with it, and I will see you on the next one.